Rules, champions, weight classes, stars, sponsorships, all of it has changed. But through it all, there has been one man that has always been there to tell us what happened and has made the company billions of dollars. This is the Joe Rogan effect. What if I told you that Joe Rogan has had a bigger effect in the UFC than even the founding members of the company? But if he's really that good, why does he get so much hate?
And is under fire for some new comments from an episode this week.
Joe Rogan needs to be fired from the UFC commentary team immediately.
Joe Rogan is now facing criticism.
I just don't think Joe Rogan is in it like he once was.
This is the full story of Joe Rogan.
Come on, just touch it once.
I will forever always be the Fear Factor guy. I don't want to do commentary, man. I'm here to get drunk and watch people kick the shit out of each other.
That deal sucks.
I'm here just to answer one question. How did a young comedian turned podcaster made the UFC billions of dollars?
Thank you, Jerry. I'm here with millionaire slugger Frank Valentian.
You already make $6 million a year.
I don't care how many millions of dollars a year you make.
At 27 years old, struggling comedian Joe Rogan lands 2 roles in 2 sitcoms.
Here comes Hardball. Where's Hardball?
What's wrong with hardball?
Yeah, you were on a baseball show.
I gotta make it while I can. What if I get injured? I gotta live the rest of my life on $12 million bucks?
It was about a baseball team, a fucked up baseball team.
Frank, what are you doing?
Did you read his jokes column today? Look at this.
It was an ensemble show, but I played the star player.
Valenti, what is so interesting on that TV? I think I just won the lottery.
Unfortunately, the show was canceled after 1 season, but Joe Rogan landed a 2nd role, and this one lasted 5 seasons.
Joe, the dim-witted electrician on NBC's News Radio.
I'm an electrician at a radio station. I got a lot of free time to kill, you know?
News radio was the big break Joe needed.
You can't take something off the internet.
What?
It's like trying to take pee out of a swimming pool. Believe me, I've tried wooing women.
Well, maybe you're not doing it right.
Do it the same way everybody does it. You go, woo!
Joe played a lovable and street smarts handy guy at a news station. It just happens that around this time, there was a sport that was getting a lot of steam. This new sport came with 2 big problems. It's exciting and captivating, but it was also extremely taboo. Joe was originally hired to be a post-fight interview. If you want to know more about that story, there's a card up here where I go into the full story of the UFC and their extremely crazy beginnings, but Joe Rogan gets hired as a post-fight interview for
The fastest growing sport in the world.
And they always talk about the UFC, 100% adrenaline, 1,000% pure guts.
John McCain had come out with this whole thing.
McCain came out and said,
what it was at the beginning was human cockfighting. It was.
you can't put on these unregulated fights with no athletic commission.
He just could beat on the UFC and get as much press as he wanted.
The last person on earth you want to butt heads with is the government.
And it wasn't like people were coming out and going, keep the UFC.
This is human cockfighting here.
It's sort of like human cockfighting in my view.
Ban ultimate fighting.
Back then, that was the biggest problem facing the US, was the UFC.
You have to understand how bad it was for Joe Rogan to attach his name to this human cockfighting company when he was trying to make it big in Hollywood. And due to this, Joe Rogan just couldn't make that much money out of it. So he jumped straight back to his previous passion.
And then I quit. It was just too much. I couldn't do it anymore. It was costing me money. I would make more money doing a weekend at a comedy club than I would doing the UFC. I just decided I'm just going to stay a fan.
What's happening, you cowboys?
And he released his new comedy special, I'm Gonna Be Dead Someday. He got a ton of notoriety. He was even in considerations for a sitcom called The Joe Rogan Show. It didn't get a lot of notoriety, but it didn't take off. But what it did do was give Joe Rogan a chance to host The Fear Factor.
Come to Fear Factor.
I will forever always be the Fear Factor guy. A giant hit.
Huge.
Like immediately it was a hit. Debate on the set would be like, how much blood should they drink? She decided I'll eat 3 worms. Like we negotiated to 3 worms. The most insane idea for a television show I've ever heard.
The thing about Fear Factor as opposed to, you know, a snuff film or whatever is no one was hurt and everyone enjoyed it.
Thought I would be a good fit for it because I was, I'd just been on NBC for news radio.
Huh?
Did anyone bleed from
No, no one bled.
It was a preposterous show, and I always thought it was going to be canceled.
If it's exciting, if it's entertaining, people will watch. If it's not, it'll go away.
You're going to make people eat animal dick
If they won, they got $50,000.
I would get this like pity in me, like God, I wouldn't want to eat an animal's dick on TV.
Right, yeah.
I wish these people like didn't need to get their credit card debt paid so badly. Did 148 episodes.
The show was the most vile program ever to air on a major network.
I don't want to do this to them. It's not my idea. There's a couple of times where I told them don't do it.
People who did it had a great time.
Just sick dogs on people, launching a car through a moving train.
They all did it, and they willingly did it. And if they didn't want to do any of the stunts, they could have backed out at any time.
They kept ramping up the difficulty of stuff, throw people off buildings. How many kidneys can someone eat? The stunts were too extreme.
One is tempted to strap the star and the producers, that would be you, into a pit and cover them with rats as punishment.
That show's entertaining.
They had to drink donkey. What the fuck?
This was a real
insane.
TV show.
Stunts were so extreme, Joe Rogan didn't even agree with the show. In fact, he just considered it a job, but a handsome paying job at that. What he didn't realize is that this show was gonna make him a household name.
It's good because I didn't have to worry about money. Like when I was doing Fear Factor, I didn't enjoy the job. The fun thing about Fear Factor was when the checks came. That was a great job, but it was a job. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I was doing it for money. The good thing was it gave me you money. And then when you don't have to worry about money, like you don't worry about your choices. So it gave me money where I had money squirreled away. I was like, ooh, I can relax now. Now I just do what I want to do. And what I wanted to do was like these MMA shows.
It truly is an honor to welcome back to the broadcast team here on the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the host of NBC's Fear Factor, Joe Rogan.
He did just that. He went back to MMA.
Dana and I have known each other for, what did we meet in like 2001 or something like that?
Yeah.
Dana White and I became friends because I was on Fear Factor.
But we couldn't have a better relationship.
This was like when the UFC first started going to Vegas. They started putting on shows in Vegas, and I would go there with my friends. And Dana White somehow or another found out that I was a fan. He would give me free tickets to come to the fight. Hey, we'll fly you out. We'll give you free tickets. I'm like, yeah. And that was back when you guys had just taken over the company, and you were just sort of trying to figure out what the was going on with this thing, because they were very small at the time. They were hemorrhaging money, and they were trying to build it up. And so we started going and hanging out with them. Came down to watch UFC. We started talking shit, and I knew so much about fighting.
Joe Rogan was so, first of all, passionate about the sport.
You know, I was talking to him about fights going on in Japan. Have you ever seen Sakurai? Have you ever seen Sato fight? You watch Pride? What do you watch overseas? You know, this guy, and I was bringing all these names. So I started talking to him about all these crazy fights that he had never heard of. And then Dana and I went out to dinner, and he was like, do you want to do commentary? Do you want to do commentary? Why don't you do commentary? I don't want to do commentary, man. I'm here to get drunk and watch people kick the shit out of each other. Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work. I'm not here to work. In his crazy mind, he's like, let's take this guy who's never even thought about being a commentator and make him our commentator.
And you can see his excitement through the screen, even doing shows for free. And Joe's superpower was explaining to people what was happening in a sport that the US audience just couldn't get. Now, don't get me wrong, the US loved the bare knuckle fighting, kick anybody, no rules. But something they didn't get was how the UFC essentially turned into a platform to show off Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Joe Rogan understood the human chest.
Aspects of martial arts that are extremely technical, especially Jiu-Jitsu.
What are people doing? See, this is a problem. They're not educated yet as to what's going on.
You've never done jiu-jitsu. You don't know what the hell they're doing.
Not to blow my horn, but I know what's going on.
Looking to finish it by submission.
Joe Rogan was so good at walking you through what was going on before it even started to happen.
I can give expert analysis of ground fighting. I have to decipher which is his left leg, which is his right leg, where's he tied up, where's he tangled.
He's trying to get his left leg over Ben Juradic's right shoulder and lock it down.
And I'm doing it in real time while I'm trying to be entertaining and talking. It's very complicated.
So to have a guy like him behind the mic, he was very instrumental in helping build the sport.
Nobody taught me how to do it. I just figured out how to do it.
I saw you act like a kid today. I saw you become a big fan again. Your passion is true, it is unique, and it is sincere.
Well, I'm always a big kid when the UFC's on. It literally is my favorite sporting event. It's my favorite thing to watch on television.
After that one free event, Joe Rogan became a staple for a UFC event. And if you go back and listen to every single show that you've loved, Joe Rogan is right there being the voice of it. And with time, Joe's reactions to fights became progressively more meme-worthy. However, outside of the ring, Joe Rogan was a huge ambassador of the UFC.
Sort of like human cockfighting in my view.
How is that human cockfighting? You know what that is? That's actual fighting. You boxing guys, oh, it's humans cockfighting. What you don't understand is your sport is getting swallowed. It's getting swallowed by a greater, more efficient, more spectacular sport.
And in my first video, we kind of went over him and didn't acknowledge him and give him the credit that he deserved. Therefore, this video today, Joe Rogan did everything that he could to make the masses love MMA and understand it.
Black trunks for Jones, white trunks for Goosemouth.
Or black guy Jones, white guy Goosemouth.
That was said by Joe Rogan.
Yep. Someone spilled ice in the octagon. That's a big problem. That's a lot of ice. Oh no, this is good. Look at that. They knocked the bucket over. This is the Three Stooges.
Look at that. Speaking of Portuguese, that's Japanese, bro. Oh, really? Thank you.
Can I wrestle Joe Rogan, and if I win, you come to Sweden?
Sure, get up here, bitch. If he was a girl, you would say he has a badonkadonk. What happens if you tap? That's all I want to know. What do I get?
I black out before I tap out, bitch.
Whoa.
You are a funny man, by the way.
Thank you. You're funny too. Sometimes unintentionally.
And without Discord memories plus his advocacy, the sport wouldn't be the same. And if the UFC hadn't had his charisma, they would have lost out on millions, and then maybe they would have died a slow death.
Sport, I love you, Joe Rogan.
Well, I love you too, buddy.
I mean, I think he's the best ever.
Very excited.
I'm here with Joe Rogan.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Wait, what podcast?
Hello, world.
The show was huge.
Nobody's watching this. We got 10 people in here.
Well, maybe not so huge at the beginning. But what he did do was give a voice to MMA fighters, something that had never happened before. And not just fighters, actually. Also referees, personalities, fans, everything. And this is how he just kept making the UFC millions, because he was growing the sport even when not on the clock for the UFC, building his own podcast and giving them a voice. And with this much access, Joe just filled in the gaps of a lot of stories, making it a lot more entertaining to watch the day-to-day product. This did three main things for the sport. If you were a fan, you loved the sport even more. Then the podcast made you interested in training martial arts, therefore feeding in more fighters into the system. And if you were not a fan of fighting, you definitely became one just by listening to his podcast. Yes, the Joe Rogan Experience did put a spotlight on martial arts, but it also put a huge spotlight on Joe Rogan.
Experience was reportedly downloaded 190 million times in a month.
Now, Rogan is under fire for some new comments from an episode this week.
Misinformation scandals surrounding comedian and podcaster Joe Rogan.
You see, as MMA became more mainstream and Joe Rogan's influence in the world became greater and greater, led to people realizing that the commentator of the UFC was very controversial and had a dark past.
Joe Rogan is now apologizing after videos resurfaced of him using the N-word multiple times on his podcast,
as well as controversial opinions about the future and the present.
He was a frequent spreader of misinformation.
I'm not trying to promote misinformation.
Joe Rogan is now facing criticism.
Backlash he has received over the spread of COVID misinformation on his podcast.
I'm not trying to be controversial.
He wasn't a lovable comedian and a guy just doing a show with his friends anymore. He was Joe Rogan. Now he was the man. Now he was a target. And he didn't expect this nor wanted it. People even think that Joe Rogan's commentary has declined.
Let's talk about Joe Rogan.
I have to disagree with saying that Bisping is the worst commentator.
Joe Rogan is a casual MMA fan.
As of right now, I would have to give that title to Joe Rogan.
Doubling down with some of the worst takes on the biggest podcast. Joe Rogan is shit at commentary.
I just don't think Joe Rogan is in it like he once was.
He understands the history of MMA much better than I do.
Like, compared to when he was doing it full time, he was so invested into the sport.
But this current day Joe Rogan, when it comes to knowing about the current modern day UFC and modern day MMA, he feels like a casual fan.
Because he's focusing on his podcast, his comedy. It just feels like his knowledge about the sport, the culture of the UFC, the fighters, what's going on. I don't think he has the knowledge.
Joe Rogan needs to be fired from the UFC commentary team immediately. Straight away, his commentary has got worse and worse.
I'm so accustomed to people talking shit about me. I can read someone being really mean about me and I just go, ha.
The thing with Joe is he doesn't pretend to be perfect. He'll embrace his fuck-ups and be realistic about his flaws. No matter what anyone says to the UFC, Joe Rogan made them.
He's a brilliant guy. He does his homework and he knows what he's talking about. And guess what? This is America. And you can have your own opinions about these things and you can voice them.
What I do as far as like doing commentary for MMA, there's maybe 10 guys in the world that do it.
Yeah.
You know, that really do it on a high level. Maybe 10 guys. If they don't think you really know the sport or really love the sport, those two things are critical.
Yeah.
You have to really know it and really love it. Otherwise, they're like, F you. You are not your past. You're you. You're you right now. Like the past you might have done some things you wish you hadn't done. Don't dwell on that. Use it as fuel, but don't think that you're that person that made those mistakes. You're the person who's learned.
From a 27-year-old kid and a sport that is barely legal to both of them going mainstream and making billions of dollars. Watch this video right here to check out the story. I'll see you in the next video. See ya!
Bottom for me, but they're yours now. You could drink it, but take it slow. Ballin' for you, falling for you.